Yes, and there we are again with a new episode of Dance Gems. Today we're going to talk about, do we have freedom of choice, conscious or subconscious, or don't we have that freedom, or maybe we have a little bit of freedom or a lot of freedom. And of course we do that in a relationship to dance. Now, we would never do that without my good friend and colleague Tongreten. Let me see if he's there. Hey Tom. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there, and I see myself too.
Yes.
You did a great job. So immediately we are there.
Yes, we are going to talk today about, do we have freedom of choice, conscious as subconscious, right? Freedom of choice is always, of making choices is a big thing in Dance Gems, right? We
Yeah.
believe that, and we also believe the more tools you have, the more information you have, the more informed you can make your choices. And
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
why we do these things, right? So that's it, Ton.
Yeah, is there freedom? That's actually the question. No, when you ask my personal meaning, there isn't actually. And we have several reasons for that one. To give context that there is a limit of freedom. You have freedom, but you have also always rules. If you dance a competition, you have the rules, the regulation where you have to apply to, Sean. And if you don't apply to that rules, then you take your freedom. But if you apply to the rules, then you're limited in some of the rules. And this is in every association or in every company where are rules and mostly, hopefully, they are in the front before that they are clear. If they are not clear, then you get an interpretation of the rule. And when the rule, we had also other podcasts about that one, when they are subjective, you get anyway interpretation of that. So your freedom is then also limited. But it's a very sensitive issue, I would say, Sean, actually. How much freedom dancers actually have in choose competitions to go or to dance in a company, trainers and to work with trainers and choreographers sometimes is also limited. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Do we have freedom of choice? There are outside things, those outside things you can decide on consciously. So let's say you want to dance a competition with a certain association. That in itself is your prime core choice, right? How you abide to the rules is also, that's your second choice, right? And so if you want to abide to the rules, then automatically you have given yourself over to other people's choices. You can agree with the rules, then you're happy with it. If you don't agree with the rules, then you're of course not so happy with it. So that is the outside of it. Now, is it a little bit strange that some of the dance associations then they use slogans like freedom to dance or freedom of choice in their slogans, which is then in itself strange, because if you have an organization, almost per definition, the full freedom of choice cease to exist. Now, but that's another discussion. We can always talk about the fairness or the clarity of those rules. So sometimes people think they know that they have a full, consciousness over what they choose for. And then when they come into a situations, then these rules are flexible and bent by the people who are behind them. And so that becomes some sort of an unfairness. But that is a slightly
Mm.
different topic, of course, than do you have a freedom of choice. So
Yes. I give some examples, Sean. When you dance competition and you are in an association, say in the ballroom we have five, six associations, and in hip hop you have also six or seven. I feel that it in the hip hop is slightly different than in the ballroom Latin. I don't know how it is in the contemporary world. I think it's also slightly different in the competition. I don't speak now about companies because there are also issues with the companies. And mostly it's like this: when you dance in one association, say the WDC in the ballroom Latin world, that's one world association, and you would dance in another association, they would not like that, because then they would say, actually, we want that you dance in our organization, and actually you are not loyal. And because you are not loyal, we have to ban you now. But there are no official rules. So as a dancer, you are quite careful. In theory, you have that freedom. Practically, not so much. And that's from experience. Maybe now it will change slowly, because the ballroom world in ballroom and Latin gets less and less. So they have to work together, that the dancers stay, and to dance competitions. That's one. In a company, I have also examples. Say you have a company in Amsterdam and one in Den Haag, and you have two big companies. The one other company want not that you dance the choreography what they dance, because they dance in the theaters and they want that not. So actually, there's dancers, and actually they don't have the freedom to dance whatever they want from that company, because they limit the other dancers from a distance, that they not can dance this genre of choreography from that choreographer. But maybe the choreographer want to sell it to that company because he sell his choreography, but he is able to sell it in Germany or in Belgium because it's more far away, but not close to another city where is also another company. It's just an example, but it
Yeah.
happened in a practical way.
Yeah, of course. That, yeah. So the dancer in itself, of course, you always have, like I said, you always have to, if you want to dance with that company and everything is known up front, then there is a certain of freedom whether you go into it. When it's not, which is often the case in companies, because these rules change, then of course your freedom of choice also will change. Now there's another side to it, whether we start talking about it or not, is something else. There is also an internal ID. Do we have a freedom of choice? Choices are not only influenced by outside rules, and very often it's a good thing, by the way. So let me give you an example. Is if we take part of traffic, it is good that there are rules. It would be not so good if there's complete freedom in how we drive a car. That would not be good. So in a lot of cases, and often with the intentions to do that, is to regulate, of course, things. So that's a good thing. And that's also true for associations, right? For dancing. So we have in ballroom dancing, we have a line of dance. Some people want to defend that that is something natural or not. No, it has nothing to do with natural or unnatural. At some point in time, we start to do all dance in a ballroom counterclockwise. Most likely it is because if we didn't apply the rule, it would be chaos on a big floor with a lot of people if everyone danced in a certain direction. Also, if you looked at that about that historically, it had also a little bit to do with what people were wearing at that time. And so that is the dance direction we have now, and with a fancy term that's called the line of dance. Everyone
Mm.
follows that. And that's a good thing because if the floor is with a lot of people and everyone would do whatever they want, it would be chaos and it would actually, people could hurt each other very much. But there are
Yes.
also a lot of rules that you can ask yourself, is that just limiting the freedom of the dancer, or is it adding more to what we do? And that's not always the view that people have. Sometimes the view that people have is literally just it is the rule because it is the rule, and there's no further explanation of it. There's no
Yes.
further. And
No, Sean. In its theory, I would say yes, there is freedom. In practical way, no, there isn't. But maybe very little. For people who are very open, and when I look to dance therapy, they have a different word now for it. There, I would say there's a lot of freedom for the dancer there who work with them. When I would say in our method, dancegems, there's a lot of freedom in it. When I would say in Laban, there's a lot of Rudolf Laban, a lot of freedom in it. It depends which method you have also education. We
yeah,
made a
that
point.
is yeah.
Yes.
No, in the in your method and also in Rudolf Laband, that there's not that it's more describing, trying to describe and understand the deeper movements and what we can apply. So actually, that would, in my opinion, even add to the freedom. But if you take a book that I studied and to a large point, I still embrace it. But if you look at the Latin technique, which most of the time will be taught if you want to do a license, and it would be presented as this is the only way you do it, then it's presented as a rule book. And first of all, it didn't say anywhere that it is a rule book, but it is now presented as a rule book. And then it can become both limiting as giving you freedom. And that's a different way, right? So in our dance style, we sometimes have a competition. I don't know if you remember that, Tom, but we had a competition called the Basic Roomba, and then you had to dance per se within the limited of figures that we had. I thought it was fun to do. One time I actually made it all the way up almost to the first place with a lot of dances in the Netherlands. But you know that up front. So then there is someone walking around and saying, "Oh, you did something that's forbidden," and you're out. But it's a fun thing to do. And it was pretty clear what you could do and couldn't do. But when it's not clear, then the suggestion of freedom is given, but then you get often punished by something that you did not even know that there was a rule for. And that is, again, that's a slightly different topic. But I think that limits the freedom we have. There's way more things that limit our freedom anyhow within ourselves, Tom. So it's not only the
Yes.
outside world, but we limit ourselves often in the freedom we have. For instance,
Yes.
the upbringing that we have
First,
can limit the choices that we make.
yes. First, when I go to my first dance lesson, that was in a dance school, and I was totally free because I didn't know nothing. I didn't know how many dance forms you have, different one, jazz, ballet, hip hop, break dance, etc., etc. But I was going for the ballroom Latin. So I had my lessons and I liked it and I grow and I continue. I wanted to have more practice, but the studio didn't offer that. So I go to another studio because I love so much to dance. But I felt that the studio where I was, that they get angry because I was in another studio. But actually, I wanted to dance more and even
Yeah,
also to practice in the,
yeah,
say, practice in the studio.
yeah,
And I couldn't practice in my old studio where I started with lesson, but I could practice in my new studio. They offered that I could practice with a small fee every month. So I did, and I improved. And the other dancers saw this too. And they said, okay, but we want also to practice more. Where is where you practice? So then I said, yeah, I practice there and there. Then the studio owner said, please, actually, you have to leave here because other dancers, they leave also here. They are not so satisfied with what we offer. And you bring our customers to somewhere else. But actually, they asked me, and I wanted to dance more. That's actually the freedom to move more, to enjoy more dancing. They tried to limit that, Sean. That's quite funny how to see freedom. And the freedom in practice, it's actually a power of imbalance from the studio because the power is by that studio and can say, sorry, the door is closed for you. The trainer where you work in that studio or the dance teacher say, sorry, you are in another studio. I can't teach anymore. I cannot give you the lessons. And suddenly you are completely in another studio and you have to leave your friends and all your friends there. And it's feel like a power, or I could say abuse of manipulation and power, I would say, from that studio. And I didn't feel very comfortable with it. I was very sad about that one, that I have to leave the studio. Then I came in a new studio. I developed there also. I could practice, but I wanted also dance with a different girl with a different nationality. And the club where I was, they dance for, there was a club in Germany, but I wanted to dance for actually say for England. And the club say, no, it's not possible. You have to dance for Germany and not for England. So also there you limited in freedom because you practice there and they put you under pressure, they manipulate you and they abuse of power, I would say. I don't know if that's the right word, Sean. You have to help me. But these are a few examples how you get limited in, yeah, to bring your dancing forward because you love it so much.
Yeah, I think abuse of power is a really big word, of course. So I think you're right to ask if that was the correct word, right? Whatever it is, at least limit your choices. For, I must honestly say, if I hear these four choices that are very arbitrary, what is the point for? Because it's just to practice, right? What is it to them for who you are dancing? But yeah, so on a deeper scale, so there are several dance associations in the ballroom and Latin world, but there are basically two really big ones, right? And one emerged from the other. And some people say if you dance in the other dance association, then you're not welcome in the other competitions anymore. Or if you do that, then I will not coach you anymore, or you cannot take lessons from me anymore. So yeah, that is when people take freedom away. It's even worse if dancers themselves think that, oh, if I dance in both associations, I might not be, my results will go down. So then they have actually limited themselves. Now, you and I probably would think, I don't care, I dance wherever I want. But
Because I
don't
love to
everyone?
dance
Yeah, because we
and I
love
love,
to dance, we go there first for the dance. So if we don't do it for political reasons, but I do understand, of course, why people feel that. I don't immediately dismiss it. Oh, that is dumb to think that way, because it's very often influenced by people with, let's say, authority, so that we don't have to use the word abuse of power. So if they have lessons from a certain dance teacher and that dance teacher says or suggests, if you go to the other studio or if you take lessons of the other person, then I won't teach you anymore. See, that is
yes,
then
that happens,
limiting.
Sean.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot, of course. That it happens both ways. We also see
Yes,
students that if you have a good coach, you should always be either
yes.
talk or even just say, hey, I would like to have lessons with Ton and Jean and not only with one.
Yes, I had this morning a student from America, Sean,
Yeah.
from Houston, and they worked with me online. And they said, next week I have lessons from Victor. And I said, okay, where you travel to, or Victor come to your studio? No, also online. I said, that's really great. He is a fantastic person, and you can develop a lot from him, from his experience. What the opposite is, some teachers would say, sorry, if you have lessons from Victor, this was then the last lessons for me. And this I totally don't understand why teachers doing this. Actually, you have to be happy that you get more knowledge, gain more knowledge from other people. So why this would be, Sean? Do you know? Have you a reason?
Yeah, no, there's of course two sides in it. Is why does the couple has interest to dance with, to take lessons from other person? So if you don't explain that to your teacher, that can come across as a little bit like, oh, don't you trust me? But if it's just a teacher, as we explained in another podcast, then the teacher should think, hey, I'm giving you lessons, that's it. If it's his coach, he guides through the process, and that needs to be understood by both. Hey, I'm your coach, so include me in your process. And but most of the time the teacher feels threatened that he loses business, that his lessons are not valued enough, or that someone else is better than him. And so he often tries to limit the choices of their students, which in the end always, I think, ends in bad results for either one of them. Now, if you're coach, you can help another person say, okay, you go maybe to him and you want to go, I don't know for what reasons. Have you considered other options too? Why this person? So you can help. Very often in our world, and that's often in other words too, is the other teachers sometimes literally say, "Oh, you should take lessons with me." Just to also for business instead of talking to the other coach and saying, hey, I'm specialized, let's say, in lift work and stuff like that. I would never teach people lift work because that is not my thing. I would say, hey, go to Victor or go to that. They are specialists in that.
Yeah.
I would not, I would, so that would be normal. But typically you would then say, hey, let's talk to your coach. What are we trying to achieve here? And
Yes.
that openness, that creates choice.
Yes.
The non communication, that limit choice. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So
And
always communicate, be honest, be straightforward, tell it, and have a maybe a context to it why that would be the reason that the other party understand why you do that. In that case was Victor is a specialist in lifts,
yeah,
and the other girl is again a specialist in technique. And I understand that. And also the variety makes also that you are stay on track and focused and concentrated to get your goal. But too many different teachers, they say in the Netherlands, too many cooks can spoil the food. I don't know how you say this in
same in we typically say that too. Yeah, too many cooks spoil the soup. That's what we
soup.
say.
Yes, yes, and that could also be happen. Then it
Yeah,
would be
definitely. But that's
that would be necessary to have a coach then, Sean.
yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say, Tom, because that goes directly into the discussion we had about coaching and teachers. So sometimes the coaches and the teachers confuse themselves too. If the student then say, "But I'm really sorry, you are one of my teachers. We do our own coaching. You should be also okay with it." I said, "Okay, fine. That's now understood." But yeah, specifically in the world that I live in, I don't always see that openness. Now, I was lucky in the time that I was taking a lot of lessons that I always work with people, at least at a later stage, who actually stimulated me to say, hey, we're talking about jive. Why don't you also get information from the other person? You don't always have to agree with it. It don't always, as a teacher myself, I don't always say find a teacher that is exactly telling what I'm telling because there's no point. It's pretty good to hear someone's other opinion, even if it's not aligning with my opinion, because that makes the student grow. That helps him to make decisions. But if they only hear people that 100% the same thing say as I do, not sure if that's very helpful. So that's a little bit you and me. Uh, it is good to get conflicting information, but the student needs to be ready for that, obviously.
Yes,
Obviously.
absolutely. And if you have, say, the teacher who support you and guide you there, then it helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that helps, and that helps. So this is an interesting topic in the freedom of choice. I think we as coaches have a big responsibility in stimulate helping the other person to make choice. Also explaining that
Yes.
100% freedom of choice never exists, but within movement there is still a lot of freedom you can take. But so if a student is raised with is what is right and wrong, they limit the student in freedom of choice, because then they only
Yes.
looking for what is, and you can't find it because it is not there. There is no right and wrong in most cases.
No.
um, also
Would
the
say
only way, yeah, this is the only way
that
how
is
you
right.
can win.
You told me once would be say that's the end product. When it's good, what you want to do better than good. There is no other word for it. Yeah, ultimate, maybe fantastic, whatever, but still it's very subjective. So after
Very
good,
it's
there
very
is nothing.
it's very subjective. So if you that and I think that's a nice thing. It's one of the deepest discussion that Tom and I have. If you There are of course things that are literally absolute. There there are things, but a lot of things are relative, right? They are subjective. But when you open yourself to much subjectivity, actually, then you become very limited. If you look at this is beautiful. That's
Yeah.
that is for me. That would actually say nowadays, because it's subjective. So then I have a lot of choices. But for most people,
Yeah.
they actually limit them. That's a kind of a remarkable thing. If something is subjective, that means there is a lot of openness in there, right? Because beauty is subjective. But if you say, no, this is exactly what it is to be beautiful. So I spoke not too long ago to one of the upcoming, I think he's now dominating the industry of making dance clothes. And we talked about this topic. And he said, if I would make what all my clients would ask, I would constantly make the same dress. And he said, huh? Why is that? He said, because they always ask me, can you make the best dress? Now, if the best dress would exist, he said, which it doesn't, obviously, but that probably would then be only one dress. You can only have one best. So then I would give everyone the same dress, and that's not what they want. So I thought it's a young man, but I think that was a very smart way of explaining. So
Yes.
it doesn't exist. What?
No, no. That's an example shown from the side of the teacher, was it? Or yes,
No, it's the side of a dressmaker.
a dressmaker. No, but you put this example from the previous example of the subjective words from the teacher, and you go to
Yeah, the
another.
subjective word mostly from the teacher, of course. I say you do this, then it's good. Or you even hear
Yes.
famous people
And
say,
then they came
if you do this, it's natural, and if it's natural, it's good. And literally, you don't say anything.
no, no,
To be
no.
honest, because that is so subjective.
I love the line of the communication in the choice of freedom. We had it about that you are with a particular teacher. The teacher say, okay, go to the best dressmaker. Then you go to the best one. You say, can I have the best dress? And he said, okay, then all the dress would be the same. Yes, so
Yeah,
that's the small story to it. But I also feel to teachers, really many teachers do this. I don't want to say all because I cannot say that because you have also teachers who don't do that. The teachers
for sure.
say, okay, to a student in a group or to one person, you have to do black hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 2 months later, you do more blonde hair. And
Okay.
2 months later, now I want that you do red hair. That's a quite, I think, or a manipulation or abuse of power from that teacher that they put a color to some person with any context. And when they give context, it must be a really clear statement be from that teacher to do that. Because it happened also to me that my teacher said, John, you dance Latin American dancing, you are blonde. No, I don't have any hair anymore, so it doesn't matter. And he said, Tom, that was Marcel de Rijk. Unfortunately, he is now passed away. I like him very much as person, but this one, as a trainer, I didn't like at all. Maybe he wasn't a trainer for me, but a teacher or a coach, whatever. And I danced 1 year with black hair, a blonde guy, with blonde eyebrows. Looks very funny when you see the pictures. I danced a competition with it. And in the biggest competition, I thought in the world, Blackpool for ballroom and Latin, at that time, from that one association, I was fed up with my black hair, and I thought in between the rounds, I take, how you call that?
Yeah, just a shaver or something.
A shaver, and I shaved my hair a millimeter, so quite short, so that I was bald. And then I go to the evening round, the most prestige round. It's always in the evening when you are qualified to it. The judges get a shock. My partner get a shock where I dance with. The teachers around get a shock. The audience get a shock because they're only used to look to people who has black hair and looks like Latino. And I thought, I want to be myself. And that was the freedom of choice. But the consequence of that freedom of choice was I was kicked out of that round. But now, 20 years or 30 years later, no, 30 years later, still people remember that one. So
I do.
actually, yeah, you did also. So actually, at that point, it was maybe not a positive decision, but for now, it is a positive decision because people still remember me that I did something like that.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I always say. You have a freedom of choice, but you have a very limited freedom of the consequences of your choice, positive and negative. That is not so in this case. Your results were influenced by the way your hair was, which, I mean, what has that to do with dance? How far can you take that? Yeah, you could always argue one way or the other because they probably would say, "Oh, that had nothing to do with his hair. That had to do with his with the way he was dancing." So it's very hard to measure these things. So you can hide yourself behind these rules. So if rules are not clear, then it's very hard to go with that, which is slightly different than, of course, than a freedom of choice because you took your freedom of choice.
Yes, I took that, and my surrounding or my environment was totally not happy with that decision because that was totally out of their window, totally
Yeah.
out of their way of thinking. But after many years, I think, okay, actually, the limitation was not with me, it was with them and also with my teacher, because he believed really when I have black hair, I will have better results. And I was happy to be able to think by myself. I wasn't that strong at that moment, but I was strong enough to break that pattern. And the abuse of power was there, I think, from my teacher, and it was very direct. Actually formal, you have freedom, but in a reality, it cannot there is not full freedom of that. And but I take my freedom, and that's also a power of imbalance, I would say, from the teacher. Also, it happened a lot to girls that they totally always want to change the girls in the styling of the hair, in the styling of the dress, in the styling even to the dancers, which steps they dance. So that's the power of imbalance. When it would be in balance, you are a team. Together is the T, each other, E, achieve, A, more. So together, each other, achieve more. That would be the balance, the power of balance. But mostly, I know from experience, it's a power of imbalance. Even what they put on social media, Sean. Sometimes they put something on social media and the teacher said, but how you produce yourself now on the media, I'm totally not happy with it. Can you not change the picture, woman or man or team? And still the team wants to produce themselves on social media like that. But the teacher try to manipulate or say what he wants, and then it don't work on the long term, Sean.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's always a matter of consciously wants to manipulate. It depends also in how much power do you give the other one who's talking to you. Huh? I had a student, and I think this person, I think the way she put herself on social media would do her harm. But it's an opinion. I was very clear about it. It's my opinion. I could be completely wrong, but that's how I feel about it. Because yes, in specifically in these more sensitive cases, right? You should be able in this world, that would be an ideal world, that you can put on anything you want, say whatever you want. But that in itself is also, of course, nonsense, right? We talk about freedom of speech, but you should also take into account how the other people feel about that. So I have the freedom to say, man, Ton, I hate people with no hair. Now, you,
Yes.
Ton, you, in your case, you would say, doesn't hurt me, but a lot of people it will hurt. So I could
Yes.
also be more wise and think about, why would I say that? I have the freedom to say it, but do I always have to? I think freedom comes also with a lot of responsibility in taking that freedom. So it goes both ways. If I
Both
say it to
ways.
manipulate you, it's something else. But if I say, hey, at the moment, all the people with bald hair, they you get associated with the wrong group of people. Not sure if that's what you want as a teacher. I at least
Yes.
explained it. You can always make a decision saying, oh, that's nonsense or that's not nonsense. So that is one thing. I had another thing. I work with trauma people, and they often come with me on Zoom. And one of the people that I work with is a minor. I have two rules, right? There needs to be an adult in the room, right? And the second one, I would like the minor at least be properly dressed, right? And that's a very fine line, because I don't want to manipulate, but I see how young kids sometimes dress themselves, and I cannot, as a trauma coach, be associated with that. I cannot be wrongly. See,
Yes,
so
correct.
a very fine line. Luckily, the mom completely understands what I said, and she had that discussion with this girl many times. To why don't you go on the street like this?
Yes.
But do I limit her freedom? Yes, I limit her freedom. If she wants to have coaching with me, then that needs to happen, because then that's my choice. I take. So it's not black and white. As long as I give the context, I gave the context behind it.
Yes. What it goes very, it's a thin line, Sean,
Very thin line.
because when a teacher depends what color your hair is, or what color your dress is, or what color your skin is, to all these Latin dancers make their skin dark, why you must put 10 on yourself to make yourself brown? Yes, because in Asia, they they have a different skin color and want to make the skin color white. That's also very strange for the outside. Why you cannot be yourself on that floor to be that personality, what could touch the real art from that person to the viewer. This I not understand why a teacher want to influence your freedom in that one. So when you grow in your level and experience, some of the teacher really limit that without context, and some have context. But you
No, have
could also
context.
say,
But
I'm very progressive,
yeah,
and the teacher is very, always say the opposite is then traditional.
yeah.
And
But do realize, Tom, that if you, what you just said, say it in the, let's say, it's hard to say correct or not correct way, that you sway the person to the other side. If you say, hey, I would not make myself brown because that takes your choice away, then you manipulate the. But if you say it's your choice whether you want to use then on your skin, yes or no, that would be total freedom. But if you say, oh, if you do that, then you do like the other persons, and now you took away your own choice, then you actually manipulate too. Most people feel very comfortable to
I wouldn't
say,
say that
yeah,
both not,
huh?
Sean. I wouldn't say both not.
Oh no,
But
I know you would say it, but I would say in you could easily. I'm saying not you did it. I'm saying you. We
yeah.
could easily by saying you by saying, oh, you shouldn't dye your hair black, you could easily manipulate someone the other way around. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. Example like all dancers look like my pinky, very thin. And one dancer looked like my thumb, a little bit more body weight. Yeah. If you would say something from it, you could hurt that person.
Definitely.
And other teacher would probably say, could be, if you want to look like a pinky, and not like a thumb, and you want to have your results, maybe you could work on to get a pinky. I wouldn't mention that at all. I would say, okay, you are, even I would not say you are not a pinky. I would say you are you, and you have your wonderful, beautiful personality with positive things in it. And I would call the other positive things. And if the dancer wants by himself to look like a pinky, but he is a thumb, that's the freedom of choice, but also vice versa. But it must always come from the person by himself.
Oh, for sure.
And I
But
can have several
yeah,
reasons for that one. Um, that they get a better result shown, but that's not the main issue for me.
not it's not specifically in the mental coaching aspect. What I try to do is try to find out on what base this person make their choices. Is it influenced by someone else? And it's not bad, by the way. You learn from your teachers. That's why they are teachers, right? You have to because to so that's another fantasy, of course, that lives around also that we have to be complete total freedom of choice, but you take lessons from someone that you trust. The teacher cannot be, he would always influence you. That's different than manipulate, right? He would always choose you. So that's one thing we can check that from a mental point of view. The other thing that you check is, does this person make choices out of fear to be, on the
Yes,
wrong
yes,
side
sure.
of things, which is also something. So often it's the fear of not belonging. We want to belong. That's a fear, or the fear of being an outcast, or the fear of not getting the right results. There are many fears why people, so then it becomes unhealthy. Then it becomes
Yes,
unhealthy.
absolutely, Sean. I think maybe when you are a beginner, maybe you don't see the signs, and that's okay too, because you come there to have a good time. But if you grow in dancing, it would help to protect yourself also, to keep your freedom, that you recognize the signs of manipulation or abuse and can act sooner to it. If you not can act sooner to it, then you are stay in a role and it goes on, and not so much will change. And few years maybe, or few months, whatever, how long the time would be, the period, you are live in unhappiness.
Yeah.
So try to find a teacher where you feel home with and where he support all your ideas and give context, what Sean told just a few
Yeah.
minutes ago.
We used the word manipulation of abuse, and I think we should be very careful with these words because a lot of teachers are also influenced by how they were raised. So
Yes, absolutely.
they believe that they sometimes believe this is what you need to do to get success. I have the success formula, right?
Yes.
And it's not, I don't think there is conscious manipulation in there. There is manipulation in there because things, we don't always think through these things like we try to do, at least in gems, because that would be also manipulation if I say we are the only ways that knows how to reason to get the freedom of choice. So I think that doesn't exist. And if someone is just a beginner dancer in the sense of they want to go into competitions, they also look at us to help them to make choices. And I think we can make context besides these contexts and just say, instead of saying just do it because I say it. That's different. But I grew up, I'm close to 65. I grew up in a time that was very normal for parents to say, you do it because I say it. It was very normal. Parents didn't have to explain themselves. Teachers didn't have to
I
explain themselves.
got to say,
Now the culture has been almost on the other side, which makes it sometimes very hard also. There needs to be a balance in the two if you want to give, if you want to teach someone, yeah, they look at you. But I do think, Tom, that as a student grow up, you as a teacher, you need to grow with the student, and more freedom of choice will arise from it. And that
yeah,
is,
together
it
by
goes
gaining,
together. Yeah, it goes
by
together by gaining knowledge, by gaining skills, by gaining seeing more of the world. And that's what I said, the mental process is. I think that's a responsibility of, that could be a responsibility of a coach or a teacher, is saying, this person captured by fear. It took me a long time with one couple. It's just an average
couple,
couple.
was it a couple show? Two
Yeah,
persons.
a dance couple is two people who dancing in the ballroom and then in Latin world. A dance couple who had lessons with me for quite a while, and they're average dancers. They're good, and that's all relative. But and they said if we are dancing in the other association, then I think we will score less in the other association. And I said to them, do you honestly believe that these people know you? And they said, no. I said, then why? How could they possibly punish you if they don't even know you? Does that make sense? So you can help people also think to their own logic, because they might have talked to the champion in one association. And that often probably happens a little bit quicker to the top couples than so. It's all contextual. We can definitely help people to get that freedom and get away from the fear. A lot of the things we do are fear based. Well, fear, the teachers
Yes,
don't like us anymore. We are fear. And teachers threat with these things. Like you said, if you take lessons from Ton, you don't have to come back to me anymore.
yes, that's
That would, for me, automatically a reason to leave that person, to be honest.
yes,
That,
absolutely.
but that is you and me. So,
Yes, but what you could do, there are in the Netherlands, we have an organization because Kim Kalmans, she was, that goes a little bit more farther away. She had a trainer who makes sexual, how I can say, Sean, you know the story better than me.
yeah, I don't think we should go that in this has not,
Oh,
yeah, because that has nothing to do with choice, of course. But she
oh,
made
freedom.
she made an organization called Dance Dossier, which she has now a government position. So let me at least
How we call that, Sean?
Dance Dossier,
How we, dance dossier.
yeah,
Okay.
Dance
Yeah.
Dossier, and so she was there to expose people, to expose teachers specifically and studios who had, in Dutch we would say ontoelaatbaar gedrag, And in English, we would say harassment or even
Ah,
abuse.
okay.
But that's outside, of course, the choice that we had,
Yes.
the discussion of choice.
Yeah.
But it's another good topic that we should do. Maybe we should
Yeah.
interview her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We must interview her. But what I want to say, if you have such a bad way, that's a really very extreme already, Sean. I would go to an organization like that. We have in the Netherlands one. I don't know if there is in America one. If you have problems in that studio, go to that studio and mention it. If it is an organization, dance organization, go to it and say what it is. But I would try to enjoy your dancing, enjoy your freedom, enjoy your freedom of choice if you have options. If you don't have options, then you get limited. So, no options, no choice, you can only follow. And we did already a podcast about traditional teaching and contemporary or modern way of teaching. That was our podcast, season 3, number 2. Listen to that one. And we had also season 3, number 3 podcast is about trainers, judges, coaches, what is the difference and what they're doing in their job. Actually, as a dancer, I would say, Sean, we have formal freedom, but in reality, it cannot be fully always. In with some persons, yes, in some studios, yes, in some organizations, yes, but mostly I can tell it's quite limited. And maybe you think it's not so important. Total freedom, I would say, you are busy with your art, and art has no rules, and art has no boundaries. And to explore that and to make it actually also. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We're almost through this episode, and I think the last thing you said is, of course, an important one. If you decide to do a competition, whatever dance style you do, within a certain association, that was a choice of your own freedom. But then the moment you made that choice, do know that you will automatically be limited in your choices. Don't moan and bitch about it, if I excuse my French, because that is normal. What is nice, of course, is to look what is my freedom within the limitations that are given by the rules. Rules are always limiting, eh? So that's always nicer than only looking at what am I limited by. You can also look at, hey, if you look at music, what is the pause between the sounds? What is the stillness between the movements? You can also look at from the other side, which is a nice thing. Now, what we didn't talk about in this episode, which I prepared actually, so we need to do another one on this. There's a deep psychological background why people just by nature. I do that on purpose because that is now namely not nature. By nature, but actually that's more by nurture, is are limited by their choices. We didn't talk about the biases that we have because we grew up in a certain culture or in a certain family. We didn't take about we don't even realize that we have those filters when we go into the world. Everyone has them. There is no one with no filter. Now, maybe there is someone because I don't know everyone, of course, right? But in general, you could say there is no one without no filter. And people without a filter, they might live all the way on themselves on the top of a mountain. But yeah, we can do that in the next episode. In the Dutch episode, we went a little bit
Yes.
deeper into that aspect, the aspect of
Yes. Well,
biases. And we
so,
didn't discuss that at all
so
in this episode.
I when I make a choreography, the idea, I don't have also a filter. So I'm so open. But when I say the idea, then sometimes there is a shock on the other side because it's so extreme. And then I give context why I want it, and I get context back. Yeah, that's to speak about a filter. Mhm.
Yeah, I don't want to test you on it, but I could. That would be a nice thing. I can guarantee you, Tom, that we all have a filter. Even if we take away total freedom, we have filters. We are limited by the things that are given to you because we never know what we don't know. That by default filters us.
Yes, and we didn't speak about also the nature nurture principle,
Yeah,
but
we
it's very important how you get formed by your parents and by the teaching of your parents and the teachers around you and your friends, how they develop you, because you are always influenced by the environment, by TV, social media, friends, teachers,
yeah, by what you're
other
feeding yourself
dancers.
with. Yeah, if
Mhm.
you listen to this podcast or not,
Yeah, listen to this podcast or
what you
not.
do with it or
Maybe
not, you are influenced, and then that's totally fine. And therefore, by default, you can't help it. What you could strive for is to understand where do I let myself limit in the choices that I have. Do I understand my own biases? That doesn't mean that they are not there, but at least you understand them, because the need to always be different is in itself already a bias. Yeah, there should also be a freedom to say someone I want to dance traditional the way some books write it. As long
yeah,
as it is your choice, I am good with it. That's the point. But that's the question that Ton asked. Is it truly your choice or is it choice that someone else put on you? All right, there's a nice ending because we're exactly at the hour of
This
so
podcast.
many topics to
yeah, so
discuss.
much to tell about that one. You can go very extreme in it, or you stay a little bit at the surface and
Yes.
you don't care. That's also okay. Most important is you will have fun in your dancing lessons, that you have fun how you want to improve. And we will do also a podcast, and this will also be related to that one. That will be formative and cumulative. So
Summative.
result and process working. That's also holistic approach to this podcast and to all the other podcasts what we have. We have a podcast what I remember from Nature Nurture in season one. I don't know I don't know which one it was, but in season one we have did nature nurture principle from the personality. And this podcast is also quite important to relate to this podcast with has every dancer freedom? Yes, they have, but in principle, there are also many other factors what can limit it. It's the dynamic of the teacher, the studio, the organization, etc. So, Sean, you can continue. We are over the hour. Otherwise,
Yeah,
we
we are
still
over the
talk
hour.
one
All right.
hour.
Yes. Okay. So
Yes.
this
Okay.
was
So
another
this was
episode
another episode
of Dance
of
Gems.
Dance
Today
Jam.
we talked
We
about do we
talked
have
about
freedom of
we have
choice?
freedom of choice,
Conscious,
which
subconscious.
is
We didn't
subconscious. We didn't
discuss everything in
discuss
it,
everything in it,
but talked
but
most about
what
that.
most about it.
So there will be
So there
probably
will
a
be
part
probably
two of this
two of this
podcast, but
this
for now I'm
podcast.
going
But
to
for
say
now,
goodbye to
say
you
goodbye
all,
to you all
and goodbye to you,
and
Ton,
goodbye to
and
you
see
all.
you in the
See
next
you in the
episode of Dance
episode of
Gems.
Dance.
Goodbye, Sean. I hope people could understand you because your voice was a little bit broken by the
Yeah, well,
digital world.
I hear a double
Ah,
sound.
that's better now.
I hear a double sound.
You're a double
So
sound.
we can
So
find us.
we
You can
can
find
find
us on
us. You can find
Spotify,
us on Spotify,
Dancepodcast, Apples. That's what I should
Dancepodcast.
say.
What I should
YouTube
say.
at
YouTube
tongreten
at
slash
tongreten
podcast,
slash
and of
podcast.
course we have our
Of
own
course, we have our
website
website
www.gam.dance slash
www.gam.dance
podcast,
slash
and we
podcast,
are on
and we
all
are on
social media
all social
platforms.
media platforms.
So with that, I
So
say
with that,
goodbye
I
to
say
you
goodbye
all.
to you all.
Goodbye. Till next time.